Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Many of you have reached out asking me to rank some of the class-specific mechanics in Wrath of the Righteous, such as Sorcerer Bloodlines or Cleric Domain abilities. I think that could create some interesting dialogue, so let's start with Witch Patrons. Witches have a weak spellbook, so patrons serve the important role of giving them access to spells that in some cases they wouldn't have. I am sure my list varies significantly from other players, so let me know down in the comments what are your top 3 Witch Patrons. Keep in mind as we go through the list, I rated patrons based strictly on what they provide, but depending on your build or playstyle, a low-ranked patron could be absolutely perfect for you. Also, before we get into the list, for those of you that are new to my channel, here at Slandered Gaming we focus on CRPGs such as Baldur's Gate, Pillars of Eternity, and obviously Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. If that kind of content interests you, I highly recommend you subscribe and check out some of my other videos. All the way at the bottom, number 13 is Transformation. At level 2 you get Long Strider, which provides a +10 enhancement bonus to your base speed. Witches for the most part fight at range, and if you want to be a close range witch, it's doubtful you choose this patron, so I'd say this spell does nothing for you. At level 4 you get Bear's Endurance, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to Constitution. This is by no means a must-have, but it's nice to put on your tank since usually they are wearing gear that focuses on strength or dexterity and not necessarily Constitution. At level 6 you get Beast-Shape 1, which allows you to change into a wolf, providing size, natural, and polymorph bonuses to your character. Like all wolves, you are able to trip opponents as a free action whenever you attack, which potentially will knock them prone. The problem with this spell is witches have a low base attack bonus and no access to sneak attack, so your ability to deal melee damage is significantly limited. They also have low fortitude and reflex saves, so using witches as frontline fighters is problematic, both offensively and defensively. Consequently, this spell doesn't help you. That same issue comes up in the rest of the spells, which let you change into a leopard, bear, or dragon. The spells are fantastic, but not for a witch who is clearly not built for frontline combat. It's hard to recommend Transformation. Sitting at number 12 is Mercy. At level 2 you get Cure Light Wounds. This is a fantastic healing spell to have in the early game, so no complaints here. At level 4 you get Eagle Splendor, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to Charisma. This is not as universally useful as buffs to strength or dexterity, but it's still nice for some builds. At level 6 you get Remove Curse, which allows you to remove a curse by passing a check. Scrolls for this spell are very easy to obtain, and you should only need them a handful of times, so I would say this is a wasted slot. At level 8, you get Restoration, which allows you to clear temporary ability damage, fatigue, and exhaustion. It will also restore all points to one ability score. This is a very important spell to have, but again, scrolls for this are easy to obtain and won't cause diamond dust. I won't go so far as to say this is a wasted slot, because you'll probably use this enough where having someone on the team that can scribe those scrolls is helpful. Regardless, you shouldn't be wasting spell slots on Restoration. At level 10, you get Cleanse, which heals you along with ending several nasty statuses. The problem with this is, as a witch, you are less likely to be the target of these effects as opposed to the frontliners taking the real heat. I have never used this spell and consider this another wasted slot. At level 12, you get Inspiring Recovery, which allows you to heal a character or bring them back to life if they die within the last 2 rounds. There are more powerful heals available at this level, and characters should be resurrected using scrolls. This is another wasted slot. At level 14 you get Resurrection, which is a great spell to have, but again, you should be using scrolls for this, especially because the diamond cost is high, so with scrolls you won't have to pay that. This is another wasted slot. At level 16 you get Euphoric Tranquility, which forces enemies to pass a will save or become nauseated, rendering them unable to attack or cast spells. This is an extremely powerful debuff, but there's nothing else in the patron's list that benefits from setting your witch up as a debuffer. Consequently, the things needed in your build to make this spell work don't mesh with anything else that you are given. On top of that, the spell has a range of touch, and your witch should definitely not be that close to an enemy. Yet another wasted slot. Finally, at level 18, you get Heal Mass, which is the best healing spell in the game. This is another spell where you probably wanted to use scrolls for it, but at the same time you'll want someone who can scribe this scroll, so it could be worth having it on your witch. Overall, the Mercy Patron just doesn't do very much for you. Number 11 on the list is Endurance. At level 2, you'll get Stunning Barrier, which increases your AC and saves while forcing enemies who attack you in melee to pass a will save or become stunned. This spell lasts a short amount of time and your witch should rarely be struck in melee combat, so the slot is wasted. At level 4, you get Bear's Endurance, which we have already discussed. At level 6, you get Protection from Energy, which absorbs a limited amount of damage from one element. This is wasted because you should only be using the communal version that protects the entire team. At level 8, you get Thorn Body, which damages enemies that strike you in melee combat while increasing the damage you deal with unarmed or natural strikes. Most likely this is useless for your ranged witch. At level 10, you get Spell Resistance, which increases a character's spell resistance by 12 plus your caster level. This is a useful form of protection, but keep in mind if you use a lot of buffs that have to penetrate spell resistance, then this will make it harder to do that, which can be very annoying. At level 12, you get Bear's Endurance Mask, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to Constitution for the entire party. This is very useful because most of your party members won't use items that increase Constitution, so doing it via a spell makes everybody more tanky. At level 14, you get Restoration Greater. Like Restoration, this is a fantastic must-have spell, but you should cast it using a scroll. Unlike Restoration, you should need to use this often enough where making scrolls of it on a regular basis makes sense, so this is a wasted slot. At level 16, you get Polar Ray, which does 25 d6 points of cold damage against a target and 1d4 points of dexterity drain. If you set your witch up as a blaster who focuses on cold damage, this could be useful, but nothing else your patron provides will cause you to do that, and Polar Ray isn't powerful enough for you to center an entire build around it. I believe there's an item in the game that provides a suite of cold spells to spontaneous casters, and if you're building around that, then this is obviously useful, but otherwise it's a throwaway spell. At level 18, you get Sea Mantle, which is one of the best personal buffs in the game, providing a staggering +8 to AC, along with a +4 resistance bonus to reflex saves and immunity to fire. The problem is, again, your witch is a ranged combatant, and therefore it's doubtful they have focused on stacking up AC. AC is all or nothing in Wrath of the Righteous. Either you stack it as high as you possibly can, or you ignore it. By level 18, the demons you are facing don't care if your AC is 30 or 40, so spells like Sea Mantle don't provide additional protection. Mirror Image, Blur, Displacement, and spells of that nature are what will help keep your ranged combatants alive. This is another dead slot, and overall, Endurance focuses on too many spells that won't help your witch. Number 10 is Ancestors. At level 2, you get Bless, which provides a +1 morale bonus on attack rolls and saving throws against fear effects. This is a useful spell in the early game, so no complaints here. At level 4, you get Aid, which is going to provide the same morale bonuses as Bless, while also giving the character up to 18 temporary hit points. Temporary hit points from different sources stack, so while this isn't useful on its own, when you combine Aid with other spells, it gives your character a significant increase. At level 6, you get Prayer, which provides a +1 luck bonus to attack rolls, weapon damage rolls, saves, and skill checks, while giving your enemies a -1 penalty on those same rolls. Luck bonuses are rare, so most likely they'll stack with what you are doing, and this buff is useful throughout the entire game. The only disadvantage is the buff is very short, so you have to be strategic about its use. At level 8, you get Shield of Dawn, which damages enemies that attack you in melee range. Witches should be in the back, so getting attacked in melee should be a rare occurrence, and I consider this to be a wasted slot. At level 10, you get Burst of Glory, which provides a +1 sacred bonus on attack rolls and saves against fear effects, while also providing up to 20 temporary hit points. Sacred bonuses are rare and probably stack with what you have, so this is another short but nice buff that is useful throughout the game. At level 12, you get Heroism Greater, which is one of the best buffs in the game, providing a +4 morale bonus on attack rolls, saves, and skill checks. It also makes you immune to fear and provides up to 20 temporary hit points. This is fantastic, and you'll want the buff on as many party members as possible. At level 14, you get Bestow Grace of the Champion, which makes a target immune to diseases and fear effects while also letting them add their charisma bonus to all saving throws. This spell cannot be used on paladins, and your alignment must be lawful good. None of your party members except Sela are lawful good, and she's already a paladin, so this is only useful for your character. Witches use intelligence as a spellcasting attribute, so it's doubtful your charisma score will be high enough for this to be worth it, and this is likely another wasted slot. At level 16, you get Angelic Aspect Greater, which provide bonuses to AC, saving throws, and damage resistance, but it only applies to your character. Again, as a witch, you'll be in the back line, and taking a bunch of buffs focused around your personal defense doesn't make much sense, so this is wasteful. Finally, at level 18, you get Weird, which is one of the best spells in the game, but there's nothing else in this patron that fits with it. Consequently, you run into the same issue I mentioned with Euphoric Tranquility, and overall, the Ancestor's patron focuses too much on short, limited use buffs. Number 9 is Agility. At level 2, you get Expeditious Retreat, which provides a 30-foot enhancement bonus to your foot speed. This is a huge quality of life increase when exploring Dresden or anywhere else by yourself, but outside of that, it's not going to help your witch. At level 4, you get Cat's Grace, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to dexterity. This is very useful, especially for frontline tanks who will benefit from the increase in AC, or archers who are dependent upon that stat. At level 6, you get Haste, which provides the same speed increase as Expeditious Retreat, while also giving you an additional attack whenever you do a full attack. You also gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls and a +1 dodge bonus to AC and reflex saves. There's a strong case to be made that Haste is the best buff in the entire game. This slot alone bumps agility up in the rankings because it's the only way for witches to get access to the Haste spell. At level 8, you get Freedom of Movement, which allows you to ignore movement impeding effects such as slow and paralysis. This spell was a requirement in Kingmaker, but I honestly never used it in Wrath of the Righteous. I know some people swear by this spell, so I won't call the slot wasted, but you can definitely live without it. At level 10, 14, 16, and 18, you get different polymorph abilities that all have the same issues I brought up regarding beast shape. At level 12, you get Cat's Grace Mass, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to dexterity for the entire team. This is fantastic and helps your entire team defensively. Overall, Haste is Agility's main claim to fame, and if you don't need that spell for your witch, then it's hard to recommend this patron. Number 8 is Devotion. At level 2, you're going to get Divine Favor, which provides a luck bonus of up to +3 to your attack and weapon damage rolls. If you are playing as a blaster, the attack bonus could be useful. At level 4, you get Invisibility, which provides a +20 bonus on stealth checks. I never use this since it disappears as soon as you attack an enemy, and I consider this to be a wasted slot. At level 6, you get Magical Vestment, which provides an enhancement bonus of +1 for every 4 caster levels your character has. This ability has been patched so that now instead of stacking the bonus on top of what your armor already has, it just ensures the enhancement bonus reaches whatever your caster level allows. So if your caster level is 12 and you use this on a +1 armor, then it will raise the armor bonus to +3 as opposed to +4. That's a long way of saying the spell is only useful if for some reason you are sticking with armor that is outclassed by other options that are available to you. It could be useful so the slot is not wasted, but the patch definitely hurts this spell. At level 8 you get Confusion, which forces enemies to pass a will saving throw, or you get to roll a D100 that determines which of several temporary debuffs they will experience. Confusion can be a great way to shut down a single target, but it's not powerful enough for you to build around it, and you don't get any other enchantment spells, so this is a waste. At level 10 you get Flame Strike, which does up to 15d6 fire damage depending on if enemies pass a reflex saving throw. I treat this spell the same as Polar Ray in that it's not powerful enough to build around, but if you use an item that gives fire spells to spontaneous casters, then this fits right in with what could be a powerful setup. At level 12 you get Bull Strength Mass, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to strength for your entire team. If you have characters who have completely dumped strength, then this can be nice for them, but otherwise I don't see it as particularly useful. At level 14 you get Bestow Grace of the Champion, which we have already talked about. At level 16, you get Holy Aura, which is one of the best buffs in the game, providing a spell resistance of 25 against evil creatures and their spells. More importantly, the buff completely blocks charm and dominate attempts, which is huge in the late game. Definitely nice to have someone on the team who can regularly cast this. Finally, at level 18, you get Heal Mass, which we have already discussed. Overall, Devotion is a hodgepodge of different spells, some of which are really nice, but it's difficult to make a build around this collection. Number 7 is Elements. At level 2, you get Shocking Grasp, which does up to 5d6 points of shocking damage onto an enemy. This spell has a range of touch, and usually you don't want your witch to be that close, but it's still not bad to have in the early game. At level 4, you get Acid Arrow, which does 2 to 4 points of acid damage for up to 6 rounds. This is mediocre compared to Scorching Ray, but it's still a damage spell, so the slot is not wasted. At level 6, you get Fireball, which does up to 10d6 points of fire damage to an enemy, depending on if they can pass a reflex save. That means the first 2 spells you get from this patron require a ranged touch attack, while the third and more powerful spell requires you to have high enough DC on fire spells that enemies will take full damage. This is obviously problematic, but let's circle back to that point after we see the other options. At level 8, you get Dragon's Breath, which allows you to do 12d6 points of energy damage of one type towards an enemy depending on if they can pass a reflex save. With the proper build, this option can definitely be nice. At level 10, you get Flame Strike, which we have already discussed, and it fits in nicely with Fireball and Dragon's Breath. At level 12, you get Acid Fall, which places a -2 penalty on melee attack and damage rolls to all characters in the fog while cutting their speed in half. It also does 2d6 points of acid damage to each character within the fog at the start of your turn. This spell is not affected by spell resistance, so it can be a really nice debuff option. At level 14, you get Caustic Eruption, which deals up to 20d6 points of acid damage to all creatures in a 30-foot burst centered on you, depending on if your enemies can pass a reflex save. If they fail the save, not only do they take full damage on the initial burst, they can also take additional damage for the next 2 rounds. The problem with this is your witch is probably going to be in the back line, and most likely other party members will be in the area and potentially impacted by this spell. You can mitigate this with spells that decrease acid damage on your party, but you might still find it difficult to utilize this option in a way that isn't damaging for the team. At level 16, you get Polar Ray, which we have already discussed. Finally, at level 18, you get Icy Prison Mass, which forces all enemies in a 30-foot burst to pass a reflex save or become paralyzed. Paralyzed is an extremely powerful debuff, so this is nice to have, but the rest of the build seems much more oriented around fire, so it might be difficult to integrate this into your setup. Keep in mind, to make elemental powers work, you have to take the feats and mythic feats or mythic abilities that will boost your DC and overcome enemies' elemental resistance. That's a tall order for multiple elements, so while having all these options sounds good in theory, in practice, it's actually a significant investment to create a character who can use them competently. Consequently, I rank this patron lower. Number 6 on the list is Healing. At level 2, you get Remove Fear, and at this point in the game, you don't have anything that makes you immune to fear, so it's a very useful spell. At level 4, you get Restoration Lesser, and at this point in the game, you don't have the resources to just create scrolls whenever you want, so even though I usually want to cast restoration-related spells as scrolls, I don't consider it a waste to have the spell available here. At level 6, you get Remove Disease, which allows you to make a caster level check to remove the disease from a character. This spell is very easy to get from scrolls, and depending on your religion stat, some characters have an ability that lets them remove diseases once per day. This slot is wasted. At level 8 and 10, you get Restoration and Cleanse, both of which we have already discussed. At level 12, you get Pillar of Life, which allows characters to spend a standard action to touch the pillar and be healed up to 20 points. Undead creatures take damage if they step into the pillar. This is an inefficient way to heal, but it does fit into the cleric playstyle this patron is going for. At level 14, you get Restoration Greater, which we have already discussed. At level 16, you get Cure Critical Wounds Mass, which is okay for healing, but it's not going to make you stop missing the ability to channel energy if other party members do not have it. Finally, at level 18, we get Heal Mass, which, as I've already stated, is absolutely fantastic. After reviewing this, you might wonder why healing is higher on the list, considering I am not a huge fan of most of the options. The reason for its higher rating is at least this patron is consistent and gives you an actual playstyle to build around. Outside of elements, I think the previous patrons feel like a melting pot of different approaches that don't really have a connecting thread. I am not a big fan of what healing provides, but I do give it points for consistency. At number 5, we have Deception. At level 2, you get Vanish, which temporarily makes a creature invisible. Like invisibility, this effect ends once you attack a creature, so I almost never use this. At level 4, you get Invisibility, which we have already discussed. At level 6, you get Displacement, which provides a 50% miss chance for one creature. Absolutely fantastic protection for tanks or characters with low AC. At level 8, you get Confusion, which we have already discussed. At level 10, you get Phantasmal Web, which forces all enemies in a 30-foot burst to pass a will saving throw or become grappled as if in a web spell. This causes creatures to be unable to move, they take a -4 penalty to dexterity, and a -2 penalty on all attack rolls and combat maneuver checks. In addition to this, impacted creatures must pass a fortitude save every round afterwards or become nauseated, which renders them unable to attack, cast spells, concentrate on spells, or anything requiring attention. The secondary effect is fantastic, but you have to wait for it to take effect, so this is a decent debuff, but not one I use on a regular basis. At level 12, you get Serenity, which causes all enemies in a 30-foot burst who fail a will save to take 3d6 points of damage each round they attempt to harm someone. The damage is mediocre, and I prefer debuffs that either set enemies up for major damage or flat out stop them from damaging the party, so this isn't a spell I use, but if you are focusing on the enchantment school, then it will fit right in. At level 14, you get Invisibility Mask, which casts invisibility on your entire party. I don't find this particularly useful for the same reasons that I don't find invisibility useful, but your mileage may vary. At level 16, you get Angelic Aspect Greater, which we have already discussed. Finally, at level 18, you get Weird, which once again is an amazing spell that can wipe out an entire room if you are built properly. This patron gives you a little bit of illusion and a little bit of enchantment, but not enough of either one to say there's a clear build path. I rank it higher because I think you could do more with this than the other options, but it still feels disjointed. Next at number 4 is Shadow. At level 2, you get Vanish, which we have already discussed. At level 4, you get Blur, which provides a 20% miss chance for one creature. This is a fantastic way to protect tanks or creatures with low AC who really need to ensure they don't get hit at all. Great spell to have in your repertoire. At level 6, you get Displacement, which, as previously mentioned, is fantastic, but it lasts for a significantly shorter duration than Blur. A great protection option when you know you are heading into a really tough fight. At level 8, you get Shadow Conjuration, which allows you to use the Illusion School of Magic to recreate conjuration, summoning, or creation spells of level 3 or lower. These spells are only 20% as strong as the real thing unless you make enemies fail a will save, in which case you can dupe them into believing it's the real thing and they'll take full damage. I am not a fan of summoning in Wrath of the Righteous, so consequently I'm not a fan of this option, but depending on your playstyle, it might work for you. At level 10, you get Shadow Evocation, which does the same thing as Shadow Conjuration, except it applies to low-level evocation spells like Fireball, Lightning Bolt, and Shout. This allows you to focus on the Illusion School while still getting access to Conjuration and Evocation spells, albeit potentially weaker versions of them. Definitely a very cool option. At level 12, you get Phantasmal Putrefaction, which forces all enemies in a 30-foot burst to pass a will save or take 1d4 points of wisdom damage. Enemies who fail that initial will save must attempt another will save on the next round, and if they fail that, they have to then pass a fortitude save. If they fail that fortitude save, they faint as if asleep. Waking up doesn't end the spell effect, and they will have to again pass a will and or fortitude save, or they'll fall faint again. So on the one hand, the second half of the spell is fantastic and a great way to debuff a large group. On the other hand, the fact that you use this spell but have to wait a whole round for the good stuff to start really hurts it. In a fight against trash mobs, you'll probably clear out a bunch of them in the first round anyway. In a boss fight, you want the crowd control to kick in before enemies have a chance to react. So while this spell does have a very powerful secondary effect, I find it hard to recommend and basically consider this a mediocre option. At level 14, you get Shadow Conjuration Greater, which works just like Shadow Conjuration, except you can use conjuration spells of 6th level or lower, and non-believers take 60% damage. At level 16, you get Shadow Evocation Greater, which works just like Shadow Evocation, except you can use evocation spells of 6th level or lower, like Chain Lightning or Sirocco, and non-believers take 60% damage. Finally, at level 18, you get Shades, which lets you use conjuration spells of 8th level or lower, and non-believers will take 80% damage. Again, since I am not a huge fan of summoning, the Shadow Suite of spells doesn't appeal to me personally, but this is a very consistent, well put together setup, and there's a mythic ability to make your Shadow spells even more powerful. Quick note before we go over the top 3 patrons. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you subscribing and hitting the like button. This information tells me which content the community is enjoying and helps my videos spread to more people. I really appreciate all of the support. At number 3, we have WotR. At level 2, you get Snowball, which does up to 5d6 points of cold damage against one enemy. Not bad to have in the early game. At level 4, you get Resist Fire, which is useless because you should only be casting the communal spell, which gives the entire party points of resistance against one element. At level 6, you get Protection from Fire, which is also useless, since you should be using the communal spell that gives the entire party points of protection against one element. At level 8, you get Ice Storm, which showers a 30-foot area with hailstones that do 3d6 points of bludgeoning damage and 2d6 points of cold damage to all creatures within the area. It also makes the area difficult terrain for the duration of the spell, and creatures inside the area take a -4 penalty on perception skill checks. Obviously, this patron is going for a cold damage playthrough, so this spell fits right in. At level 10, you get Icy Prison, which we have already discussed and fits right in with this build. At level 12, you get Cold Ice Strike, which does up to 15d6 points of cold damage to all creatures along a straight line, depending on if they can pass a reflex saving throw. Great stuff and fits right in. At level 14, you get Ice Body, which provides immunity to ability score damage, critical hits, blindness, disease, poison, and all spells or attacks that affect your physiology. Again, great stuff, and you want to keep this on at all times. At level 16, you get Polar Ray, which we have already discussed and is a great addition. Finally, at level 18, you get Polar Midnight, which causes all creatures in a 30-foot burst to take 5d6 points of cold damage and 1d6 points of dexterity per round. Enemies can pass a fortitude save to negate the dexterity damage, but must take the cold damage. As far as top level spells, I am not a big fan of Polar Midnight, but it fits in perfectly with an Ice Queen playthrough. Overall, fire is a vastly superior option to cold, since there are a lot of items that help you become more effective with fire spells, but if you really want this type of playstyle, it's hard to go wrong with picking the WotR patron. At number 2, we have Strength. At level 2, you get Divine Favor, which we have already discussed, but it's actually even better for this patron because clearly you are trying to make your witch a frontline fighter. At level 4, you get Bull Strength, which provides a +4 enhancement bonus to strength for one character. Obviously very useful for the playstyle this patron is going for. At level 6, you get Heroism, which is one of the best early game buffs, and it provides a +2 morale bonus to attack rolls, saves, and skill checks. This is a great spell to have on your entire team. At level 8, you get Divine Power, which replaces Divine Favor and provides a luck bonus of up to +6 to attack rolls, weapon damage rolls, strength checks, and strength-based skill checks. You also get up to 20 temporary hit points, and when making a full attack, you can make one additional attack. However, that extra attack does not stack with the one you get from haste, an absolutely monster buff that helps any melee-based character. At level 10, you get Righteous Might, which provides a +4 size bonus to strength, a +2 natural form bonus to AC, additional damage resistance, and a -2 penalty to dexterity. Another fantastic buff for this playstyle. At level 12, you get Bull Strength Mask, which we have already discussed. At level 14, you get Legendary Proportions, which provides a massive +6 size bonus to strength, along with a +4 size bonus to constitution and +6 form bonus to AC. You also increase in size by 2 categories, which increases the damage your weapons can do. This is an absolute must-have buff for any martial character. At level 16, you get Frightful Aspect, which provides buffs that are irrelevant compared to Legendary Proportions, but it gives you an aura that automatically shakes enemies. This is absolutely devastating against enemies if you combine it with the Shattered Defenses feat, which makes enemies flat-footed if you attack them while they are shaken or frightened. Flat-footed enemies lose their dexterity bonus to AC, which makes many enemies significantly more vulnerable. Honestly, all of your melee combatants should have Shattered Defenses, and at least one character close to the front line should have Frightful Aspect. Finally, at level 18, you get Heroic Invocation, which is the most powerful version of heroism, providing a +4 morale bonus to attack and damage rolls, along with immunity to charm and fear effects, and some temporary hit points tossed in as well. It's also communal, so this spell will apply to all allies within 30 feet with just one casting. Absolutely fantastic spell, and as you can see, strength is an incredible patron option and possibly the one that is the most well put together out of the entire list. Unfortunately, the problems that I mentioned with transformation apply here as well. Low base attack bonuses and low saves make it very hard to recommend witches as competent frontline fighters, and they don't get any subclasses that make up for this. Those of you who have watched my ranking series already know that Hagbound is a trap. This patron is fantastic, but witches just don't have a good way to make use of it, and consequently I cannot rank it number 1. Number 1 on the list is Insanity. At level 2, you get Color Spray, which places a debuff on all creatures within a 40-foot cone, depending on what their hit dice is. Long term, this is useless, but at the time you get it, this spell can be very useful, although it does require some micromanagement to make sure you are not hitting allies. At level 4, you get Hideous Laughter, which forces one enemy to pass a will save or fall prone in laughter. Not only is this a very effective debuff, but it's also hilarious to use, and there's a mythic ability option that spreads the spell to other enemies. At level 6, you get Hold Person, which paralyzes one enemy, a fantastic option when there's a boss character or a high threat target surrounded by a bunch of scrubs. At level 8, you get Confusion, which we have already discussed. At level 10, you get Mind Fog, which forces all creatures in a 20-foot burst to pass a will save or take a -10 penalty to wisdom checks and will saves. Affected enemies experience this debuff for 2d6 rounds once they leave the fog. This is a monster debuff that sets enemies up for terrible things to happen to them. Laying down Mind Fog and following up immediately with Weird is a deeply satisfying room clearing combination. At level 12, you get Serenity, which we have already discussed. At level 14, you get Insanity, which works just like Confusion, except enemies are impacted permanently, which can be a great way to shut down one troublesome target, and it fits in perfectly with this playstyle. At level 16, you get Cure Critical Wounds Mask, which makes absolutely no sense in this setup, and pretty obviously was just thrown in there. Clearly, Euphoric Tranquility should be in this slot, but nothing's perfect. Finally, at level 18, you get Overwhelming Presence, which is one of the best debuff spells in the entire game. All enemies in a 30-foot burst centered on you must pass the will saving throw or fall to the ground and cower. Each round after that, they can attempt a new saving throw to end the effect. If creatures clear the initial save, they become staggered for 1 round. If they fail the save but then clear it later, they take 1d6 points of wisdom drain and become staggered for 1d4 rounds. Absolutely incredible and fits in perfectly with this suite of enchantment debuffs. There's a clear line for you to follow here, and it's very easy to build around this setup. That wraps up my rankings of all the witch patrons. Again, I would love to hear your thoughts, so let me know which patrons you prefer in the comments. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.